So what I've done this morning is I've driven about an hour and 10 minutes up to the Bellarine Peninsula, and I'm going to do some land-based fishing. Great spot around here to catch something like a snapper off the rocks. Definitely get flathead and whiting and all sorts of species around here, but snapper's going to be our primary target species today. It's pretty challenging conditions, but we've got a couple of rods out, we've got a variety of baits. And what we're going to do on this window is really run you through a whole heap of different tips on how to improve some of your land-based fishing in terms of the gear that you use, the baits that you use, some of the techniques. We're going to run through a lot of that in today's video. Hopefully catch a cracking fish in that process to share with you. Anyway guys, sit back, enjoy the show. Okay, so let's start off by talking about gear selection and a couple of really handy tips in here. So for starters, when I'm doing this sort of land-based fishing, I like to go with a longer fishing rod. So anything that's sort of between 8 foot and 10 foot. So this is a 9 foot rod that I've got today. This is a Savage Salt 1 DFR rod. So 9 foot. I really like this because it's white in colour, so really high vis, which helps when your rod's either sitting upright or on the rocks. And obviously because it's 9 foot, you get that really long casting distance. And obviously we're going to be chopping and changing different sinker weights. So that's why it's really important to have a rod that's nice and sturdy. So I said 6'10" class, 9 foot in length, and that's going to allow us to get some really long casts. Because obviously in these areas you want to be able to punch out your baits as far as you can. The other thing as well is if you are fishing in really surf areas, then you might even jump that up to sort of 12 foot or 14 foot. And that's because obviously in those areas you really want to have your rod standing upright and above the crashing waves. So in those situations you'll be using things like big star sinkers, you'll be casting up far, and by having your rod upright, having that longer length rod is really going to help be able to tell when you got catches from those crashing waves. But circumstances like these, anything from 8 foot to 10 foot is absolutely ideal for me, and that's the gear choice that we're going with today. Whoa! Alright, we got a good fish. Oh my god. Whew. Oh yes, yes. 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 Woo. Woohoo! There we go. Oh yes. So excited with that. Look at that. There's the paternoster rig in his gob. Hell yeah. How good is that? So we've been here probably for about 15 minutes and the conditions are treacherous, so I'm hoping the audio isn't too bad, but I'll tell you what, it is all worth the effort when you catch a fish like that. So that is a snapper off the rocks, and we're going to be running through lots of different tips for you today to hopefully help you catching some beautiful fish like that. But I tell you what, that was really tricky because obviously fishing here on my own, and that rod absolutely took off, and by the time I grabbed the net, climbed down those rocks, and those rocks were mighty slippery, and then sort of battling the fish in one hand and then with the other hand obviously just trying to keep my balance and climb down the rocks. And that is a magnificent snapper, so I'm absolutely thrilled about that. I've only been here for about 15 minutes, so it's a great start to the day. And then what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to run through a handful more of fishing tips to hopefully help you catch a few fish like this. So we're going to run through a bit more about gear selection and technique and baits. but I'm bloody happy with that. I'm absolutely thrilled with that. So the next tip is all about the baits that you're going to use, and I think a really important thing is to take a variety of baits. Don't go there with the one thing, because fish like to eat different things on different days, and if you're going to have a spread of 2 rods, it's good to have 2 different baits and see what they're going on. So today I've got some fresh squid which I caught a couple of days ago, which I've cleaned, and I'm going to use those as calamari rings, which are a great bait because they don't fall off the hooks around here, and especially when you're trying to cast out far with that 9-foot rod, that's really handy. So I've got some squid, definitely pilchards, that's a bit of a staple bait, and also got some silver whiting. So for me there's 3 different baits that I'm going to be chopping and changing on, and then obviously if you notice a pattern where the fish are biting on one type of bait, then what you can do is load up on that. But definitely take a variety of baits, and obviously you're not just limited to those baits, there's a whole heap of different baits. I've also got some salmon and some mackerel, so there's a heap of different things that you can do. Mix it up, have some fun with it, try and work out the pattern of what's going on the day, and then load up on that. There we go, we are on again. This one doesn't feel quite as big. Oh, then again, it is. Let's grab this net just in case. There's a rock down there I can get to. Let's see. Oh no, it's not as big. What is that? It's a salmon. All right, lift him up. Oh, I dropped him on the rocks. Oh no. Oh no. Big salmon. All right, so one of the next key tips is to stay active. And I know there's that temptation when you go land-based fishing to cast out, pull up a chair, and then sit there and just wait for the action to happen. What you're going to find in areas like this, particularly when it's windy, particularly when there's a little bit of swell, is you're going to get a lot of weed build up on your line. You're also going to find that you get a lot of pickers, a lot of your smaller fish that will come and just nibble at your bait. So it's really important that every 10 minutes, bring in your lines, get all the weed off there, make sure your baits are really nicely presented. If you're using something like a full silver whiting or a full pilchard, and you've seen like the belly's been bitten out, then replace it. Put on a nice bait. Always make sure you've got good bait presentation, and always be active. So every 10 minutes or so, pull in those rods, make sure they're right, clean all the debris, get them back out there, because that's going to increase your catch rates. You guys need a net? Do you want the net? Yeah, do you want net, or you're right? Snapper or... Oh, you're kidding. Have a look at that. Oh my God. Look at that. That's what it's all about. Yep. Great job, mate.
I'm running 60 pound on this.
Are you?
60 pound and 50 pound braid.
Oh. Great job, mate. Well done. Okay, so another important tip is to bring a whole range of different sinkers in different sizes. And this is a little bit of the theory that I do when I'm fishing in areas like Western Port on the boat, is throughout the day that tide strength is going to change, and obviously the weather conditions might change as well. So it's really important to have a whole mix of things. You just want to be prepared for whatever the day throws at you. So this is my tackle box here, and as you can see, I've got a whole range of different stuff in different weights and different sizes there, and that's really important. So what I've done with the 2 rigs, I've got one that's got a paternoster rig and that's got a loop knot at the end, and the other one I've got your typical Western Port rig, which has got an easy rig slider. The beauty about both those rigs, it's really easy to chop and change sinkers. It literally takes about 5 seconds to just unthread it and thread a new sinker on. And as I said, I really like to have a range with me. So basically stuff as small as that, which you might be using on slack tide when there's not a lot of current, and then you might be things, you know, probably a lot today will be probably about that sort of that 3 or 4 ounce size, and then obviously we've got stuff even substantially bigger. We've got 5 ounce, we've got 6 ounce. So just to be ready with whatever the day throws at you. You don't want to turn up to a spot like this where it's heavy wind, quite a lot of swell, and then you're finding that you can't get the casting distance or you can't keep your baits holding the bottom, and that's where you want to be. And I think we're getting a bite, so hold on, let's go check that out. Oh, here we go. Might have something on. Definitely something playing. flooded. There you go. Right. It's a little flooded. Now, another really important thing is to learn how to fish the tides, guys. So before you go out fishing at any time, you should always be checking a number of things. Obviously, the wind, the swell, and definitely the tides. The tides are absolutely critical, and knowing to fish which part of the tide is also really, really important. So if you're fishing in an area that's really shallow water, you know, it might be difficult fishing there in low tide. So even looking at those sort of things, for me, I always find that the optimal bite window is usually about 90 minutes each side of that peak tide change. So today is, getting a nibble here. Today is absolutely perfect. So I've got to my area at 7 o'clock and that peak tide change is at 8:30. So it means I've got 90 minutes of the run-in tide, then you've got slack water, and then you've got 90 minutes of that run-out tide. And I find that that 3-hour period is generally the most productive. It's because the fish just seem to be more active in those times. And obviously if you can align a tide change with the sunrise or sunset, that's even better. That's generally the best. When you're checking the conditions, it's also a good idea to have a look at the wind direction. And the reason being is you can plan your day to fish a spot that has the wind behind you. And what that's going to do is going to help to get you that extra casting distance. It's also going to help to maintain your line staying straight. Because obviously if you're fishing in a side wind or a headwind, what will happen is your baits will come back to you or they'll go out right out to the side, which can make it quite tricky. So what I tend to do is when I'm planning my day, I'll go and check the tides, I'll go and check the swell, but also go and check the wind direction, and I'll try and pick somewhere fishing where I know the wind's going to be behind me, and that's really going to help to make my day a little bit easier. Now, another quick and easy tip is when you're retrieving your line, because you might be changing bait, you might be checking whether there's any weed or debris on your line, is you got to burn it in really, really fast. And the reason for that is a lot of these areas are very rocky and very, very snaggy. And if you just wind it in at a nice slow pace and bring it in, what you're going to find is your heavy sinker or your hooks are going to snag up on the rocks or the weed or the reef. So it's really important to keep your rod upright and burn it in really, really quickly. So whether you're fishing in the Ballarat Peninsula, whether you're fishing in the Mornings Peninsula, whether you're around Melbourne now, the Warmies, a lot of these areas are rocky and snaggy. So if you're going to bring your rod in, lift your rod up nice and high and burn it in nice and fast, and that's going to prevent you from having to re-rig your lines up all the time. Now, it's also a good idea to rig your baits really nice and straight and properly. And obviously in these conditions, your bait falling out is one of the biggest problems. So got a silver whiting, it's really, really hardy. So I like to just pin that underneath the spine, take that all the way through. Just make sure there's no scales on that point of the hooks. And you basically want to pin that through the cheek. That way that's not going to go anywhere. Make sure you've got really good hook exposure like that. And then this hook here, we're going to basically pin that through. Okay, just pin that through. Okay, that's going to go out like that. So look at that for hook exposure. That is really, really good. And you're just going to finish it off with a little 1/2 inch knot like that. So you're just going to wrap the line up, feed the tail through, and then tighten. Look at that. That is absolutely perfect. So that is perfectly rigged silver whiting. Okay, so let's talk about fishing rigs. So obviously I've got 2 rods today, and what I've done on purpose is I've got 2 different fishing rigs that I've created myself before I've come out. So my preferred land-based fishing rig is a paternoster rig, and that's where you have your sinker at the bottom through a loop knot. So that allows you to have different baits at different heights. The best thing about that is that the sinker is at the bottom, and that really does help with your casting. So when you're using these longer rods, you've got sinker at the bottom, it's just really, really easy to cast, and you're going to find you're going to get really, really long casting distance, and you can chop and change that sinker easily. So for me, the paternoster rig is probably the go-to land-based fishing rig. The other one I've got on is like a Western Port style of rig. That's where I've got an easy rig slider that can run up and down the main line, and then I've got a length of leader to a double snelled rig, so I can put on a full silver whiting or a full pilchard. Now what I like to do when I'm land-based fishing is usually that snell rig will be about an arm span. When I'm land-based fishing, I actually trim that down to about half. So that's probably about a 60 centimetre size. And again, the reason why I do that is just purely for casting. So if you're trying to cast a leader that is about 1 metre long, it's really tough and awkward to cast. So I just trim that right down, and that still allows you to have a full bait, silver whiting, pilchard, whatever else it might be, but get that optimal casting distance so you can get your bait right out. Well, that's a wrap, everyone. I hope that you've enjoyed the episode. It's been pretty challenging out here. It's been windy, it's been rainy, and obviously it's been quite slippery. But despite all of that, we've had an absolutely awesome time out here. Caught some cracking fish, and I think more importantly, we've run through some really helpful tips that I hope will help you with your land-based fishing. Little 1%ers around the right gear choices, having a variety of baits, having a variety of sinkers, casting techniques, all that sort of stuff. Anything that you can do to basically increase your catch rates to catch some awesome fish just like we did today. Anyway guys, I hope that you've enjoyed the episode. I really appreciate you watching, and I hope to see you out on the water sometime soon. Take care, everyone.